I wonder if I'm gonna be able to stop sighing every time I press record on the camera. Do you know what it is? It's like it took. Oh my god, it took some really, really intensive, consistent work to make the cameras not feel triggering, and to be able to be authentic with one recording. I still have moments where I'm like, oh, I have to reassure warriors, but I do it. I run my process out loud because then that's potentially helpful for other people to run a similar process. So you see when it happens. But it used to be that I'd I'd hit record and I'd get this like gripping sensation, and it would feel like, okay, the mask is on now, and it's like my me, my consciousness would dart out of my body and into like the camera, the viewpoint, the internet, the whoever could be watching, and I'd start getting thoughts of like how I was going to be perceived, how everything I was saying would come across. And now when I hit record, I get this like settling in my body, in my chest, because we did so much work, I guess, to be able to do that. So it's like it's become a cue for me to check if I'm there and feel myself there and feel my body. Dude, that's such a relief. So this is why I always sigh the second the video starts. It's becoming a consistent theme, which is kind of funny. Okay, one of the things that I wanted to talk about from our recent journals is like thinking and recognizing stuff about connection and about ways that I've that, that like a million hairs in my mouth. It's okay. Be that way when you live with dogs. Fuzzy little fucks are worth it. So it's like recognizing how connecting to others, which I swear that connection with other people is vital for trauma processing. Maybe just connection, maybe connection with ourselves as well, because connecting within the system and connecting with me, just in my subsystem, as well as connecting with people outside, seems to be how and where we process a lot of trauma. Not all of it, but like it it comes on in leaps and bounds there. So I feel like that's. I mean, it makes sense actually because if our brain is, if people did the damage, a lot of the time, obviously not always, but like a lot of the time, I think, and if our brain has been wired for protection, then yeah, connection would be the way we're rewiring it. So it makes sense. So there's like, I've noticed that our brain is wired to protect us, um, in ways that actually prevent connection. And they're ways that I'm not always, actually, I'm very rarely conscious of, actually. And bringing conscious awareness to it, um, is really the first step in being able to work through it and change that process or those processes a lot. And one thing I noticed the other day, lipstick, one of the joys. I don't know why, because like biting a fleece blanket is the grossest, squeakiest like sensation ever, but like my tooth squeaking from tissue is satisfying. Sensory stuff is wild. Mm. So one of the things I noticed was the other day we had this experience where I was telling Ryan something, a conversation we'd had in the system, um, where we'd started like praising one another. And when I told him the sentence that was said, he was like, "Is that how it was said?" And I was, because it was kind of rambled over quickly, and I didn't even notice until he. Because if I quote stuff, I do tend to quote verbatim. I like to make sure that there is limited. Uh, Sudden noises in my environment make me would cause irritation because it felt scary for anyone. Like my brain would go, "Oh, you're not allowed to do that. It's not safe." So then I'd feel irritated, and we're countering that with thinking about the my dog is well resourced and happy, and then thinking about the cute little like the way they drink with the rolled backwards tongue spooning up the water. So that's why they are. And I threw myself by thinking of my dog's backwards spoon tongue. Right. Well, what was I? Oh yeah, and so it was weird that I gave a kind of vague quote of something, but I hadn't even noticed that I'd done that. And when Ryan asked, "Is that how it's said?" I was like, "Oh no, well, that's weird. I can't remember exactly how it was said." That's so strange because I can remember what I'm saying still in the story and like the context I'm going with and the point I'm making. The point that I was making was like if I ask like I had a habit of checking for external validation to feel better, and although that would make me feel better in the short term, it seemed to either make me worse or not help in the long run. um, and I think it's because the fact that I, as the host of my subsystem, had to check indicates that I was not certain for us. So that lack of certainty, I think, in me is what's causing the insecurity and it like doesn't help all the way through. Whereas if we reassure and validate each other in this system, especially if I do for my own subsystem, but also if other people in the system do, then it has more of a long-term internal build sort of uh, thing. And I was just explaining this to him that I had discovered this, and then I got to the part where I just couldn't remember exactly how it had been phrased. And I was like, that's so weird because I can remember exactly what I'm saying. I know what I'm telling you. I just can't remember the sentence. And I felt kind of like a hesitating, withdrawing thing. So I went about my reassuring of like, we're safe. We're safe to, to tell Ryan whatever it is. I wonder, because usually it's safety. Like it's always safety, basically. How is this protective? How is this defensive? Is like the question for me. And like, it it turned out that younger parts were afraid that he wouldn't understand that the way the compliment had been phrased was not like I don't have to give context to anything we don't want to give context to, so I'm avoiding some context while trying to still give you the full context so it makes sense. And here is where the pausing and the what do happens. And basically, we were concerned that he wouldn't understand us. We were concerned that um, if we told him exactly what the quote was, he would misunderstand how it was meant because you really need that because it sounded like it was meant one way, and you have to get the vibe and know how we interact in here to know that that is just how reassurance and comfort is sometimes approached, and it's like a bit juxtaposed. So the basis was that we were afraid of being misunderstood and of that being triggering and invalidating, and not being seen, feeling like rejection, um, had had made us sort of sabotage ourselves in a way we hadn't even noticed, because our fear that he wouldn't understand us made us doom him into not being able to understand us. If he hadn't been so like fucking perceptive and adept and chill to have caught that and checked and like be calm enough and chill enough that we were like, oh yeah, we can, you know, we can tell him anything. So like a lot of shit had to be caught for this to even have been noticed and acknowledged. I'm so grateful. Like, we fucking lucked out with him. Holy shit. Oh my god, having a moment. Um, distracted myself with brain exploding love. Okay. Yeah. So our fear of not being understood by him had made us give him half the context, expecting full understanding, and like mitigating some details, giving him a half truth. Well, that pretty much ensures that he's not going to understand because we haven't given him all the information to understand with. I hadn't even noticed that I'd done that, and I'd done it. And I just thought it was like a really interesting show of how the fear of vulnerability and rejection and fear of being misunderstood can contribute to us ensuring that that is the case, which would reconfirm our own fears and biases that that is the case. And you know, it could have been a whole different conversation if not for how fucking wonderful he is as a person, and how fucking wonderful we are as people. Because then I got the information given back to me by because the kids in here are so fucking brave and trusted me to be like, okay, we can say and we did, and it was fine. He did understand, so it was like it was a really good, really healing conversation, where we could go, oh, we can tell him all of this context, and he will understand us. And I think it was really interesting because it's it's like man, that could have been a real that would have, if he hadn't caught that, that would have been a situation where we could have come away feeling like we weren't understood despite going into it being vulnerable, because we still felt like we were being vulnerable and sharing stuff, and we were. It's just that through pulling half the context back, yeah, we were still being vulnerable, but in a way that was kind of doomed to be misunderstood. So I think that's interesting, and that's something that I've learned, and that I'm curious about, and about sort of seeing the you know, that is the fact that that felt like total authentic open vulnerability, and it was such a seemingly tiny part that changed it, that I'm like, oh, I wonder how many other ways our brain tries to protect us from being misunderstood in a way that actually prevents us from being vulnerable and having connecting authentic experiences.